story about country boy Carl, baddest man you ever seen, steal your soul with a snarl. If he ever had a problem with you, better get gone, cause you may not be alive by the end of this song. Everybody always wondered what made him that way. Guess it never really mattered, cause the fact still remains. He ain't taking no losses and he'll never run away. That's the way that he thinks to this day. He said, it's my time, it's my time. I won't lose and can't stop my drive. It's my place, and I can't wait, and I won't break, so get on my way. Oh yeah, it's my time, it's my time. I won't lose, can't stop my drive. It's my place, and I can't wait, and I won't break, so get on my way. Oh yeah, it's my time.
coach, I've been going hard, time to let it show. Everything raw, give it to me now. Let me have the spot, man, it's going down. Day and night. There comes a time when your worlds will collide. Gotta get a win, I won't lose a game. This is my year, I ain't gonna break. Ain't got no time for me. I work too hard to be here. Ain't got no time for no fear. I work too hard to be here.
Good evening, race fans, and welcome to iRacing's coverage of the fifth race for the 2024 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series, live tonight for the virtual Richmond Raceway in Richmond, Virginia. James Pike alongside Taylor Burris and Ryan Vargas. And Taylor, we've crossed over into the second half of the Contender Series, but more importantly, we may see our first drivers potentially clinch places in the Coca-Cola free agency period by night's end.
We certainly can see that possibility happening here tonight, James. And this is the track where we'll see a little bit of maybe possibility of chaos happening here. One thing to keep in mind with Richmond is that it's a track that is fun. It can provide a lot of great passing opportunities, but also a lot of mistakes that could come from each and every single one of these drivers. Safe to say, no one is safe until that checkered flag falls.
Ryan, this is the only short track that we visit in the Contender Series this year, and that means it's already going to be a little bit different compared to all the other places we go to. But even then, Richmond's got its own character amongst the short tracks in the eNASCAR world.
No, absolutely. Richmond Raceway is one of my favorite tracks on the circuit, both in the sim and in real life. I mean, plenty of grooves to choose from, plenty of tire wear, and especially if we get a long run going into these races, managing that right front and right rear is going to be key to making sure that you get to the end and have yourself a good finishing position.
We likely are going to see a fair share of cautions tonight, so strategy may be a little bit different too, Taylor. It might not necessarily be about trying to make a fuel run. It could potentially be about making sure that you're on the right strategy at the right time, and a lot of these crew chiefs, I think, will be doing a lot of math on the fly. Worth noting that as we enter November and enter the holiday period, that the biggest iRacing sale of the year is back, and now through December 2nd is the best time to renew your iRacing membership. This year, as is the case every year, renew early with 25% off 1 or 2 year subscriptions, and new members can sign up to 50% off when you purchase your membership to iRacing through the iRacing Black Friday sale. And you can visit iRacing.com/Black Friday for more information. Let's take a look at the highlights from last week at Darlington Raceway, where Malik Ray led 119 laps and Ryan Luza led 1. But Taylor Burris, the one that Luza led, was the most important one to lead of all.
Absolutely. I mean, we saw a great dominant effort right there by Malik Ray. And then right there you see Ryan Luza just staying tucked up behind him, staying right in his tire track from start to finish. Luza was looking to try and just survive, given the fact that he's had such a tough few weeks leading up to this. And then we go on board with a couple of other drivers. A driver who was looking to have a good run, but unfortunately did not, was Ray Alfala. And then here's an incident that happened later on, of course, with Logan Clampett, looking to make his way up into it. Had some tough calls that he had to deal with as well. But contact right there, you saw. And then here is one of the big ones that happened with Vendaval, Frisch, Clampett, Maines and Company, who was collected up in that incident.
And Ryan, as we start looking at some of this, you start looking at some of the drivers that are in very precarious positions so far as the points go. Taylor mentioned Ray Alfala, but part of that came off the back of some runs that weren't necessarily what they wanted or were near their potential at Darlington last week.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Darlington kind of proved its namesake there, right? Too tough to tame. And you saw a really talented driver in Logan Clampett, proven Coke Series competitor. He's 11 points behind the cutoff right now. He's 3 points behind the cutoff right now. But still, when you're in this position, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. And, well, if you're in any sort of hole, you need to get out of it. So big situation there that he needs to get himself out of.
work to do for some stalwarts of this series. Let's take a look at the schedule here, where we've been, where we're going, and where we are tonight. Vegas, Homestead, Phoenix, Darlington. We've already competed at Richmond tonight, then Dover Motor Speedway next week, and Texas Motor Speedway in 2 weeks. And after that race in Texas, we'll have the 30 drivers that will enter the free agency period for the Coke Series next year, of which 20 will be signed to teams and participate in the 2025 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series. So part of it is proving yourself on the racetrack. Part of it is making sure that people know that you are worthy of being a Coke Series driver.
Absolutely, and as we see here, Richmond Raceway is so critical with all the action that we'll see. And then, of course, Dover, the Monster Mile, a track that is going to test every single one if they can survive Miles the Monster. And then we wrap up deep in the heart of Texas here at the Texas Motor Speedway, November 19th. It's going to be exciting action, of course, but also a lot of things could go up in the air for certain drivers if they play their cards right.
Plenty of room for the standings to change as we enter tonight's race at Richmond. Let's learn a little bit more about Richmond Raceway. Ryan Vargas, take us through tonight's track analysis.
Yeah, Richmond Raceway, like I said earlier, one of my favorite tracks on the schedule, 3/4 mile in length. You got 14-degree banking in the corners. The front stretch is a bit more banked in the back stretch at 8 degrees compared to the back stretches too. This track opened in 1946. The 2023 Contender Series winner was Derek Bordeaux.
Bordeaux, strong name, a driver with tons of experience in this series and plenty of racing credentials to his name on the oval side of iRacing in particular. We're about halfway through qualifying. We'll take a look at our eNASCAR race analysis coming up and what's on tap for these drivers this evening. We'll go for 130 laps, just under 100 miles, just over 150 kilometers, full course cautions and a restart zone as per the norm in the world of eNASCAR. Drivers will have to pit at least once. Maybe the biggest number to note tonight, Taylor, 3 additional tire sets, 40-mile-an-hour pit road speed. But whereas we've seen some of these races where there's been the potential for these races to get stretched out on long green flag runs, and maybe you could play fuel games and strategies and tire games and strategies. Tonight, I think it's going to be about when is the right time to take fire or tires, and how do you read when the yellows fall to determine when the right time is to come down and get service.
That is where these drivers are going to have to listen carefully to their strategy calls from their crew chiefs and spotters to help determine that, because we may see some drivers try and stretch out that tire life a little bit on one set of tires, so that way they have an extra spare set towards the end of the race, because we've seen time and time again on short tracks, those fresh tires can be incredible to help out towards the end.
Get a look at Blake McCandless's machine here for tonight. Bit of a different scheme for him, the blue and red, but a neat-looking race car there, Ryan.
Yeah, absolutely. Blake McCandless here tonight. He's been one of those guys that's been kind of sneaky all season long, as you see him getting up to speed for his Q lap here. He runs that top side in 3 and 4 there, just trying to really build up that momentum. Kind of brings it down to that middle lane through the corner and kind of just trying to keep that momentum. This place is, while it's a short track, you definitely want to keep that momentum as best you can.
And you get the opportunity to build up a little heat in the tires, especially if you're trying to run a qualifying session. We know that grip usually works out a little bit better when the tires are warmer, so it makes sense that you run up there for a warm-up lap. I think to a point that Taylor just made, though, before we get into our grid, you've got drivers who may take tires late. There's also the possibility that some drivers stay out on old tires, and we get enough cautions that they're able to maintain their track position. And Ryan, is there any way to determine whether or not you want to be on one side of the corner or the other?
Man, I mean, if I'm one of those guys, I like being on offense. I like being able to charge. I mean, this track, you see it right there with watching Blake's qualifying lap. There's 3, 4, 5 lanes that you could choose from here. I mean, ever since we've seen some of the latest updates with iRacing, there's plenty of lanes to choose from, especially as the tires do wear. So a lot of options to choose from once you get that fresh rubber on there.
Time to stop talking strategy and start talking about our starting grid for race number 5 of the 2024 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series at Richmond Raceway, the only short track on the calendar. And the cars are beginning to grid up. Quentin Warman, the most impressive rookie so far in this series, with the fast time tonight, 21.393 seconds to roll off from the pole alongside Taylor Hurst, who's very high in the point standings. Great qualifying effort for Nexus Esports' Michael Venable, who will start alongside North Force Racing's Wyatt Tinsley in row 2. Ryan Luza, who won 1 week ago at Darlington, will start from 5th. Brian Mercurio, another North Force driver, will start 6th.
Moving on to row number 4, we'll see Logan Clampett. Alongside him, the Ryco driver of Brandon Hauk. Rounding out your top 10 is Brad Wright and Timothy Holmes from Dead Zone. Row 6, we'll see Briar LaPrade and Eddie Kerner, a Norse Force row 6 indeed.
Looking to the inside of row number 7, you got Malik Ray. He dominated that race at Darlington, but did not lead the most important lap. He starts on the inside of row number 7. Blaze Crawford to his outside. Matthew Zwack to the inside of row 8 with Dylan All to his outside. Nate Stewart in that 67 machine lines up inside of row 9. And Agnel Phillip in the 94 lines up outside row number 9.
Christopher Hill will start 19th. He starts tonight very high up in the points standings, 8th as we enter proceedings this evening. North Force's Michael Frisch starts in 20th. 21st in the grid is Coke Series veteran Matt Busa. Connor Yarashak had a good run at Darlington last week. Will start in 22nd. 23rd on the grid, another Nexus driver, Matthew Morton. And Cody Bias, who's shown some strength in this series at Richmond in the past, will roll out 24th for Dead Zone.
We're going to hometown native for Garrett Main, starting in row 13 on the inside with Alexander Russell from EPI right there alongside him. Ray Alfalo looking to try to see if he can have anything for him with the Legacy team alongside Kevin Champagne as they move on to row 15 to round out your top 30. Michael Bumgarner and Tyler Gary.
Picking off where you left off there, rolling off in the 31st position, there's Ryan Doucette to the inside of row number 16. To the outside, Colin Bowden. To the inside of row number 17, in the 33rd position, Ethan Lane. Kwame Scott, one of those Coke drivers who's got dropped down to this series. He's had a rough go of it so far, so he needs all the track position he can get. He rolls off to on the outside of row number 17. Kate McClenny, the inside of row number 18, and James Wenzel to the outside of him.
Final 4 drivers of the grid: Dylan Jones, Dalton England, Blake McCandless, and Colin Keister complete our 40-car field for race number 5 of the 2024 eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series from Richmond Raceway. Lights are off on the pace vehicle. Quentin Warman, who has impressed mightily in this for as young as he is, 16 years old, 7th in the points, 41 points clear of the drop. Another number to watch tonight as we roll through the evening, and especially once we throw down the checkered flag. 81 points. If there's anyone that's 81 points clear with their drop, it is a near certainty that they will be in the top 30. So Eddie Kerner tonight enters 72 points ahead of proceedings. It will take a regular finish, just a good normal night should do it for him, Taylor.
Absolutely. Just get out there, log some laps, make sure you don't get into any major troubles early on. Eddie Kerner easily could lock in and move into the eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series free agency later on this year.
The other 4 drivers north of 40 points to the good entering tonight: Taylor Hurst, Wyatt Tinsley, Dylan Alt, Brian Mercurio. They have the opportunity to potentially get themselves into free agency by night's end. The rest of these drivers will try and fight their way through the field to gain more points and make their life a little bit easier in the last 2 weeks. As Quentin Warman leads us to the green, we're underway at Richmond Raceway, and they wrecked before they even hit the start-finish line. Agnel Phillip was one of the ones involved. A few others that are tied up in that is 2. Ray Alfala had significant front-end damage to his nose. Michael Bumgarner also went around and has left front damage, and I believe Ryan Doucette is the other vehicle involved.
We normally don't expect the big one to happen at Richmond, but when it does happen, it is absolute chaos, as we just saw right there, and we'll hopefully get a look at the replay to see what happened. But I have to say, it had to do a lot with wheel spin and checking up.
You're working in high registers here, Ryan, so
Man,
compared to some of the other places, this is a place where it's easier to spin the wheels.
yeah, it's very, 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 very incredibly difficult here to get going through the gears here. We're going to get a replay right here. We're looking kind of like, I think, looking around Nate Stewart here. We're going to get a good look at it here. Oh, I see what's happening here. A bit of a stack up through the middle lane. It all gets checked up on the outside lane. And that is the 94, it looks like. Agnel Phillip, he just gets hit from behind and turned around. It's just absolute chaos from there. We talk about some of these big players back there. Ray Alfala being one of the most notable back there. Former multiple-time champion in the Coke Series. Caught up. Victim of circumstance.
Trying to figure out where the stack up started. Looked like it was ballpark, Brandon Hauk, Timmy Holmes, Eddie Kerner, but when you have a stack up like that, that ends up getting amplified, and the further back you go, the more abrupt those stops can be, and it can get tricky to avoid these sorts of things. We talked about it just a little bit ago. The biggest iRacing sale of the year is back. the iRacing Black Friday sale. You also see it on the ticker throughout the course of the evening, but 25% off 1 or 2 year subscriptions, 50% off for new members, iRacing.com/Black Friday. If you've been thinking about getting an iRacing subscription, if you, like me, need to renew your iRacing subscription, this is traditionally when I get my 2-year too, because this is when you're going to get the best value. If you want to get your subscription for your membership as cheap as possible, Taylor Burris, this is the time of year to make that move.
Absolutely, and of course a lot of great new content already on the docket for some of those who maybe are just trying to reactivate their account and come back. So make sure you come back and join us here on the iRacing platform, and it's going to be exciting to see what 2025 can bring.
Lots of fun. Also, if you want more updates from the world of eNASCAR, take the QR code in the lower right-hand portion of your screen and scan it and sign up for more information today, courtesy of iRacing, the official simulation partner of eNASCAR. I think we got maybe half a straightaways worth of racing before we ended up with the yellow flag. However, worth noting that Taylor Hurst was able to get past Quentin Warman in that very short stretch, which means that Hurst is going to be the control car for this restart. Ryan, from the driver's perspective, what significance does that carry, especially compared to being the first car in the opposite lane?
Yeah, absolutely. As the lights are out of the pace car here, it just gives you that little bit of an advantage, right? You're able to kind of play some games. Do I go early? Do I go later? Do I wait a little bit? And also, you kind of want to know who's behind you. Hey, is this guy behind me going to give me a good push? So being in that position Taylor Hurst is in right now is definitely key for getting a good launch here. Come to the green.
Taylor Hurst gets a great jump there. Coming back to the green flag, Warman will have to try and hold off Michael Venable and will only be able to fight for second. Hurst is clear by about maybe half a car length, maybe a little bit more. Wyatt Tinsley, Brian Mercurio, 2 drivers high up in the point standings, already near the top 5, and they're 2 and 3 wide, a little bit further back for position.
They certainly are. You got 2 Ryko drivers and Timmy Holmes still trying to keep it 3 wide as they work their way off turn number 4. Holmes nearly scraping the outside wall, but Quentin Warman trying to fight his way through the field, as there you see one of the drivers who was runner-up last week at Darlington as you ride on board with Malik Ray trying to negotiate this traffic.
We talk about drivers that might be a little bit under pressure this evening and drivers who need good runs. Michael Venable, the blue car, just a little bit behind the leader there as we go on board with Malik Ray, who had such a good run last week at Darlington. But Venable enters tonight 76 points back of the leader and 4 points back of the cut line at 30th. So I imagine we're going to see him race a little bit harder because he just has not had the luck, has not had as much pace as some of the other drivers in this field, and needs a top 5 like this to vault himself back into contention desperately.
Yeah, Venable was being very aggressive on that initial restart. He dove to the inside of Warman there, just trying to get what he could, but just having a really tough time getting that car to wrap that inside line. I mean, you're seeing it all throughout the pack here. Warman, he was able to roll that top side pretty well, and that's product of Richmond Raceway. This place has multiple lanes, multiple grooves, where you're able to keep that momentum up.
Looking back on board, Ryan Luza, another driver that we talked about in pre-race that's also in a similar precarious position like Michael Venable. That purple, white, and orange car on the right-hand side of your screen. Logan Clampitt got caught up in a wreck mid-race at Darlington last week. 4 points behind the cut line, just like Venable. They're tied for 33rd in the standings, so it's not that much ground to make up. But this is not just a driver with Coach Series experience. This is a driver who, in his first stint in the Coach Series, was perennially a playoff contender, one of the best of the best in the series, and looking to get a spot back in the series where he knows he can be competitive if he gets a chance.
One of the things that I pointed out in Phoenix last week was the different wheels these guys are going. You look at Ryan Luza here, he's got the stereotypical, oval, full rim, but Warman here, he's got the Formula rim. He's got the Formula wheel on that thing. I don't know how these guys do it. That cannot be comfortable, but hey, I mean, to each their own. He's fighting himself pretty good. He's in a good spot here, running the second position. I could tell a lot of these guys are just biding their time, and Warman has himself a good feel of that wheel there.
Oh, you make a good point. You're the driver here, so let's talk about that a little bit. What sort of advantages would a traditional circular wheel that you see in a lot of oval racing have over the Formula-style wheel that we're seeing some of these drivers use in their rigs?
Well, you do get a little bit of options where you want to place your hands, right? Like, I'm one of those guys that like to have my hand under one of the spokes, my thumb under one of the spokes. Probably not the most ideal if you want to keep your thumb intact in an incident, but, at the end of the day, it's very comfortable. But, some other guys, they just prefer having it like this, having your placement like that, like Warman does. And obviously it's working because he's fast. So we got a pretty tight battle here for 15th.
Indeed we do. Blaze Crawford, Eddie Kerner, Christopher Hill, and Dylan Altz, the 4 fighting for spots here. And really, really good stuff in the back of the pack.
Keeping an eye here on this battle. There you see Dylan Alt trying to work the outside lane as best as they can. And then there you see the 11 of Hill just trying to send it into the inside of Alt. There behind him you see Frisch and Maines battling for position right there. I got to ask Ryan, when we watch this battle, we're now getting halfway through a little bit of a green flag run towards this start of the race. When do we start seeing that tire fall off here at Richmond really kick into overdrive?
Oh, you're already seeing it. I mean, you could definitely see that these guys are definitely starting to fight the handle right here. Dylan Alt, he's moving up to the second lane here. You see he's kind of keeping his left sides just below that hash mark, kind of cuts below it on the exit there to get a good straight drive off. And he's going to use that lane to actually clear Eddie Kerner. Eddie Kerner is one of the guys who's dominated a good portion of the season, running kind of in the mid-pack here. I'm a bit shocked to see this, but this is the product of Richmond Raceway. It's a cheese grater. You're going to feel that right front, right rear grate a lot. And, you see the 62. Matt Busa jump to the third lane there. He's going to carry that momentum and roll over the rear bumper of Kerner.
Going on board with Matt Busa, driver out of the Chicagoland area in Illinois. And Busa, this has been a big year for Busa. He's competed in the Coke Series for so long. He's been so proficient on the iRacing side of things. But this is a year in which he was able to compete in the full-body stock car earlier on in the year. And just last week, he had the opportunity to participate with the Skip Barber School in Danville, Virginia ballparks. I think Alton technically is where you'll find Virginia International Raceway, but just outside of Danville, where he and a select other handful accomplished drivers on the sim got the opportunity to race real-life Skip Barber cars. And we know how that school's track record has been throughout the years, Taylor. So many drivers, especially on the road racing side, have come through the Skip Barber School and found their way into success in sports car racing. But I think that also says something about Busa just as a driver in general. He can get it on the ovals, but he's quick on the road circuits too.
Well, that's the thing with the Skip Barber School. I mean, you have some well-known drivers in both oval racing, sports cars, IndyCar, all going to compete in the Skip Barber Formula Series. For Matt Busa to go out there and have the chance to compete in that series is a major honor for him, as it is a premier racing school and racing series with their Formula Series.
If you want to learn how to road race, one of the best places to do it. We'll go on board now with Ryan Luza and Logan Clampett. Luza in the black and neon colored car. Clampett in that purple, white, and orange center of your screen. Luza currently 4th, Clampett currently 5th on the racetrack. And these leaders have already gotten down to single file racing.
Yeah, and it's an interesting situation here, right? Because we talked a lot about cautions all in pre-race here, but everybody's kind of settling in here. Everybody's in a single file line, and right now Ryan Lewis is having to play the game of how hard do I push to defend Logan Clampett from passing me, right? Logan Clampett, he's slowly starting to gain on him, but I mentioned tire wear earlier. We're already over half a second slower than where we were to start this race, and we're only 23 laps into this, and really we spent, 3, 4, 5 laps under yellow, so make that 18 or 19 laps under green. So a lot of tire wear already to start this event.
Ryan makes a great point. So let's sort of run the span of times that we've seen just in this session. When they qualified, Quentin Warman had a 21.393. The fastest lap of this race is in the ballpark of 21.8. And the leader, Taylor Hirsch, just ran a 22.6. So, yes, to Ryan's point, already back by almost a second and over a second slower than the qualifying time. But that's also, I think, a product of short track racing, too. All of the short tracks that you go visit on the sim, Taylor, regardless of whether or not it's Richmond or Bristol or Martinsville, you're going to have tire wear. You're going to have to manage these tires, especially if we get a long green flag run.
And the best way to try to manage that tire run is how much wheel you're putting into these corners. We're riding on board now with Tyler Carey. Look at how much he's cranking on the wheel right there. And then turning it back. You want to try to keep that car as straight as possible in these corners and not sawing on the wheel as much as you can, because that's going to just eat away at those tires a lot quicker compared to someone else who's maybe just keeping a nice smooth line off corner right there, going with that flow of how the track is laid out. And I have to say, Ryan, I have to ask, that's probably what you would be doing when you're racing in these situations.
Well, absolutely, but I'm also looking at the cars behind him. It looks like everybody in the second half of the field has moved up, and you talk about keeping that wheel out of the car, trying to unwind it. Don't put so much wear and tear on that right front. That's what a lot of those guys back there are starting to do. Now, it may also be a case of, hey, I want to get some track position. Let's go, let's go, let's go. But they are starting to move up the track a little bit. You see back there, now we got a car that's at about 10th or 11th there, starting to move up the groove. So you see that tire wear really coming into play here. We've already dropped another 0.2, 0.3 since we got back there. But you see right here, we're on board with our leader, Taylor Hurst. He's just put a really solid gap, about 0.7 of a second ahead of Brian Warman. I mean, hard to keep up with that.
He's not been significantly faster than Warman or Venable or Luza or anyone else in the top 10, but he's been just a little bit faster and consistently so in the last 10 laps. That's why his gap is now at 0.7 of a second over Quentin Warman, and you're starting to see him put out some distance. I think, if anything, Ryan, you talked about clean air, especially at the shorter racetracks. I think this is great evidence as to why clean air matters and what kind of advantage it can be for the leader compared to anyone else in this field.
Yeah, and I'm starting to take a look at Ryan Luza back there. He doesn't have anybody on the inside of him, but he's running about a groove to a groove and a half higher now. He's starting to move his car up the racetrack, so that's going to be a real big key here. It's lap 30 into this run, so you want to make sure that you kind of are able to keep that momentum up as these tires wear. It looks like he's going to try to look to the outside of Venable. Now we're going to ride on board here with Colin Keister. You look at this pack back here. He's got Cade McClenny in front of him, one of those guys that really needs a good run. The 27 Cody Bias. All these guys are fighting really hard for track position back here.
Keister entered this evening 9th in points, 31 above the cut line, but he also is the hardest charger of the evening so far. Started dead last on the grid in 40th, is already up to the 28th position. And these sorts of racetracks, Taylor, are places that he likes to run at. I believe, if my numbers are screwed correctly, he may have a victory in this series at Dover Motor Speedway in prior seasons. But places where you really have to get on the wheel and drive, they seem to suit Colin Keister's driving style, and the Frostburg, Maryland native trying to work his way to the inside of Alexander Russell for what would be 26th.
Taking a look here at the number 95 machine, of course, throwing it back to the great driver of Kurt Busch as he's trying to work his way around. But Venable now starting to slip back a little bit here as he's trying to fight with Wyatt Tinsley in that number 20 machine, but he just can't seem to get that run off corner exit. He's too stuck to the bottom. He's got to try to work his way up to that second groove where the cars are seeming to get a little bit better turn in and turn off the track for these drivers. He's doing okay in turn 1, but the thing is, he's got to be careful with how much input he's putting in turn 3.
How fun is this? You've got two drivers from the Commonwealth of Virginia fighting for position not only at their home track, but also two drivers that are from the Tidewater region. Tinsley from Hampton and Venable from not terribly far away in Newport News. So they're physically close to each other, they're virtually close to each other, and this is a place that both of these drivers know very well because it is their home racetrack in the world of eNASCAR.
That move right there by Wyatt Tinsley, Hampton, Virginia native, you've talked about it. That was a perfect move through turns number 1 and 2. He rode that top side, that third lane, got the momentum, and cut to the inside of the 44 there. That is exactly the type of move that you need to make to try and get that track position.
Because sometimes, Taylor, it's not necessarily about completing the pass. It's about just getting underneath somebody to where you force them to run a lane higher than they would like, especially if they're trying to be on the bottom in the next corner. And it gives you the opportunity to make that pass and complete it, maybe in not one set of corners, but a lap or 2 laps or so.
That's the thing. When you try to put that pressure on them, that makes them want to have to work a little bit more if they choose to, and that's going to put a lot more wear and tear on the tire. So it's a great strategy call when you're competing with someone, but you also got to be careful with how much you're also forcing yourself through that, because then that could also be detrimental to your handling and your tires.
Tinsley, Venable, Clampett all in the mix here a little bit further back. Cade McClenny, 18 points back of the cutoff, in need of a big run, currently in the 27th position. But for drivers like this, Ryan, how does pressure in these sorts of situations affect everything you do when you're racing?
Well, absolutely. I mean, right now, like we talked about, we're only about 40 laps into this race. That sounds like a lot, but there's still a long way to go. As long as he kind of bides his time, plays his cards right, things are going to start coming to him. If he keeps those tires underneath him, he'll probably start picking off cars here and there. Cade McClenny, he's a proven race car driver in the real world. He's a late model driver racing over in California and out of Bakersfield. So you know, this is a real-life driver who is fighting with these guys, and that's how tough this field is. A real-life driver, Cade McClenny, who has proven to win in real life, out here slinging it around with some of the best in sim racing.
Can't help but notice that he's got a City Chevrolet Days of Thunder hat on, and he's got a Spears shirt on. And Ryan, I don't know if there are any more organizations and entities out there that scream Southwest Late Model Racing than the Spears Group, right?
No, absolutely. The Spears Group is big out on the West Coast. Cade McClenny, one of those young guys that I actually grew up around. He actually bought my old Pandalero, so a pretty good personal tie to Cade here. But you see here, he's just fighting on that top side right now. It looks like he's starting to really struggle. He got a lot of cars trying to dive to his inside, and right now it looks like Cade's just trying to play a little bit of defense.
While Cade plays defense, we'll jump up to Agnell Phillip out of Brooklyn, New York. Not his first go-round in this series, but trying to make it happen. I happened to watch him last night. Had a pretty good run. Finished runner-up in one of the independent leagues that he was racing in Phoenix last night. And Phoenix and Richmond, incidentally, Taylor, are the two tracks that get compared to each other the most, both virtually and in real life, too. Similar setups that you use for both places.
It really is, but also it's just so critical with just, you see a little bit of difference as well as we are going on board with Blake McCandless, as he is in a little bit of a fight further back with the 03 of Jones as he's trying to work his way through. The problem is being outside that top 30 right now and dealing with the leaders coming in quickly, this could be detrimental for him if he's not careful. He's got to try to clear here and get away from these drivers, because pretty soon the leaders are coming up quickly.
They are keeping track of it. McCandless here coming out of turn 1, and Hurst now in turn 4. So it's about half the racetrack, I would say, that the leaders are behind this group that we see on our screens right now.
Yeah, we're going to go on board with Malik Ray here in a second, but I'm looking at the times right now. Taylor Hurst, still one of the fastest cars on the racetrack. Of the top 5, he is the fastest by, mind you, a slim margin, a couple thousandths, but he's pulling away. But we got Malik Ray here, one of those guys who, like I said, the last race at Darlington dominated. He's out here running in the 9th position. I know he wants to run better, but you know, as he continues to click off these top 5, top 10 runs, these are going to be what gets him back into the Coke Series, and he's a proven winner. So as long as he just keeps doing what he's doing, he's going to find himself back in position.
Another one of those drivers like Colin Keister that I think tends to rise to the occasion and do a little bit better when these tracks ask more from the driving perspective, when it's less about strategy, more about your actual ability. Darlington, he always runs well at. And Richmond, Ryan, if my memory serves me correctly, you hosted an event here once upon a time, and Malik was able to go to victory lane right here at Richmond, right?
I was about to say, yeah, Malik Ray, winner of the second ever E-Truck Night event that we put on back in 2020. So cool to see that he's, you know, that talent is still showing, right? He's out here running in the top 10, biding his time, continuing to show that strength that he's had all season long, and it's going to continue here in this race as he's starting to make a lot of ground now on Venable, one of those drivers who is fighting for that P2 position. I saw he was really pushing early, and I think he's starting to pay the price for it as he's starting to lose a lot of ground.
The effects of pressure. We'll talk about that consistently tonight. We'll talk about it throughout the final 3, I guess maybe 2 1/4 races and change of this Contender Series season as we go back to Tinsley and to Quentin Warman. Also, since we're talking about Malik Ray, just to put a bow on that, 31 points to the good. Malik entered tonight 11th in the standings and in pretty good shape to gain a few more points here as we now turn our attention back to the top 5 as Tinsley, the Virginian, Warman, the Illinoisan, and you've got a driver from the Garden State of New Jersey just behind them in Brian Mercurio.
Yeah, Mercurio is looking to try to have some good runs. He's had a couple of good runs this season, but he's got to keep that consistency up. One bad race could cost him detrimentally here as we watch this battle between Luza and Wyatt Tinsley. Quentin Warman right there in the catbird seat watching these two veterans battle it out for position in second place. And then you got, of course, Mercurio trying to close the gap on Warman.
Drivers are starting to settle in under the green flag, so while they do, we're going to take a moment to go iRacing full throttle and bring you some of the sounds of the Contender Series at Richmond Raceway. Saw some great battling back in and around the 20th position just a few moments ago as we went iRacing full throttle. But before we get back to covering the action, we'll take an opportunity to remind you once again that the biggest iRacing sale of the year is back. And now through December 2nd, it is the best time to renew your iRacing membership this year. You can renew early with 25% off of 1 or 2 year memberships for members who are already part of the service, and new users are 50% off as the yellow flag comes out on lap 60. iRacing.com/Black Friday to handle that. Trying to find out where the trouble may have befallen us and why we are under our first yellow flag of the evening. And it's Colin Keister and Christopher Hill that was right around the group that was battling pretty heavily, Ryan Vargas. So I'm not totally surprised that's where our first yellow comes.
I was going to say, this whole pack was all over the racetrack. I am so bummed we are having a yellow because that was one of the most majestic and beautiful looks that Richmond Raceway always provides. Late in the run, everybody's searching for grips, searching for lanes as we got the whole field coming down pit road.
Here's a look at what happened between Hill and Keister. Just a classic case, Taylor Burris, of two drivers with different lines fighting for the same space in the track.
Yeah, you saw right there, Keister just coming up the track right there. Hill just already got his nose up there. It's just the way the track flows off turn number 2. That car easily wants to work his way up to that outside wall, and you got to be so careful of where you put your car off corner exit. Like, he sends it in deep, washes up the track, but there you see right there, Hill just barely had the nose. They made contact and then collected a couple of other drivers who nearly get involved in this one as well.
Really nice work there from Tyler Gary to check up in time and not damage the front end of his Toyota Supra. One more look at this here from our top cam above turn 1, and you can see how this played out, Ryan.
Yeah, but Colin Keister does a fantastic job getting this thing locked down here. He's spinning down the racetrack, gets off the brake, lets it roll, swings it back around, no harm, no foul. Yeah, there's a little bit of a crinkle on that left rear quarter panel, but I don't think that car's too hurt at all, really. I think he could just put 4 fresh Goodyear Eagles, virtual Goodyear Eagles, and get back after it.
Keister just coming off of pit road, and everybody else back on the racetrack covering things and getting back sorted into their positions. Hurst, Tinsley, Mercurio, Warman, Luza, the 5 who won the battle off of pit road. While we have a moment under yellow, we'll remind you that in 2 weeks, we've got one more race in the fall semester for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. The time attack for that event has begun today. Michigan in the trucks. So the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series is how we'll wrap up the fall. The time attack runs from this day, November 5th, to the 14th of November, so next Thursday. And then the race will be on November 19th at 7 p.m. Eastern, and that, as always, will be broadcasted here on eNASCAR.com/live. So Taylor Burris looking towards that and thinking that's going to be a lot of fun.
A doubleheader night. I mean, you can't ask for better action, especially when it comes to racing at Michigan with the trucks. You're going to see some excitement. I mean, the closest thing to super speedway racing that you could possibly see besides racing at Daytona and Talladega and the drafting track of Atlanta. So this is going to be fun to watch the trucks battle it out. And here we saw another great race the last time out with the College Series when they were racing at Kansas with the Xfinity cars.
Logan Clampett would love to have the kind of luck that he had at Kansas tonight here in Richmond. He went to victory lane, had a great car throughout the second half of this race, and then locked it down, or shall we say clamped down a victory on a late race restart. So I suppose, Ryan, is this the part where I see myself out for terrible puns, maybe?
You know, you get one. You get one each night. I'll let that one slide. But now Kansas Speedway always puts on a heck of a show. You see right there, multiple lanes, a couple cars getting together, just meeting in the middle there. But look at that 3-4 wide action all the way through the field. So always a good time. Make sure you guys tune in for that next college event.
Michigan might well be just as chaotic, but just as entertaining, and especially with the holes that the trucks poke through the air. It's not outright Talladega or Daytona, but it's pretty close and should run much like a plate track, give us lots of uncertainty and a lots of fun to uncover in the fall semester finale for the eNASCAR College iRacing Series. Coming your way November 19th. Green flag back out there. Taylor Hurst leads this group as they fight again. Another point that we didn't get the chance to touch on, but Taylor Burris, that yellow flag came out right around the halfway point, so these drivers shouldn't have to pit again.
They shouldn't have to pit again, but if a caution does come out, that's going to be big decision time for some of these drivers, whether they come down and take tires or if track position will be critical. But right now, as they work their way off turn number 4, it's 2 by 2 from second on back. Little 3-wide action further back as you see on screen, but Wyatt Tinsley now setting himself up, trying to get the outside line as we watch Eddie Kerner take that 3rd lane around the track.
That is your points leader, Eddie Kerner, who's been in control of the standings since the drop of this series. Just about had that great run to knockout podiums at Vegas, Homestead, and Phoenix. 2 wins on the season. Didn't have a great run at Darlington, but Kerner getting closer back to form here, just outside of the top 10 as we ride on board with Logan Clampett, who finds himself in 8th.
Yeah, Logan Clampett, one of those guys that just kind of needs some solid runs here. As we take a look at the live points right there for the cutoff. This also includes the drop. So all these guys get 1 drop race. This is a very short season, but at the same time, that drop race, a lot of these guys are definitely going to lean on one of those drops.
Yeah, this is why this gets so fun. And if you're Brad Wright, if you're James Wenzel, if you're Garrett Maines right on the edge of things there, Clampett, you can see the 44, that purple there, has moved up into the top 30, so he's now on the good side of that line. Another driver that I'm curious to see while we've got this, keeping an eye on that 24 of Connor Yarashak, who pulled back some of the gap, had a horrendous start.
Oh, trouble.
His quality series and trouble on the back straightaway. Taylor Burr, 2nd yellow flag of the evening.
It was another one. Blake McCandless, Cody Bias, Cade McClenny, all involved in this one. Tough break for multiple drivers who were having not the best of runs, but also just trying to see what they can do working their way up through the field.
Matthew Morton also got significant damage in that. Yes. Looking at this, Michael Venable got a piece of this Cody Bias and not having the luck that he would have liked to have had as he did a few years ago. McClenny, who we talked about, also with significant damage. This is really the first wreck of the race that we've seen, Ryan, where drivers are going to have some sheet metal to take some hammers and saws to try and fix up.
Yeah, and we talked about earlier, Venable, he was one of those guys that was up there trying to challenge for that top spot, and now after that recent caution, kind of found himself deep in the pack. We're going to take a look at the replay here. Looks like 3 wide. Blake McCandless on the top side here. Is it a case of running out of space? It is. Oh, and Blake goes for a wild ride up on top of Cade McClenny down the backstretch there, and Venable nowhere to go. Up in the air he goes. So a lot of big hits there, a lot of destroyed race cars.
Big credit, though, to Colin Keister for the heads-up driving that he had, as we'll go on board now with Venable and see how this played out from his perspective. And Venable, right here in the back of this, tried to check up. They all wrecked in front of him, got down on the inside, and then just got clipped by McClenny at the end. Not by much, but it was enough.
And those are the hits that you regret the most, because you're like, why did I go for the gap? I mean, Cade McClenny, he was all but wrecked and just rolled back down the track and nowhere for Venable to go there.
Well, I think Ayrton Senna said it best, Ryan. If you no longer go for a gap that exists, then you are no longer a racing driver, yes?
Yes, the old if gap car situation, I guess you could say.
Mm-hmm, exactly. So I'll take precedent from one of the greatest to ever do it, even if he was a little bit more of an open wheel guy, but there's something to it. I think, if anything, it speaks more to the desperation that we're seeing out of Venable and some of these drivers around at the edge of the top 30. Let's talk to a driver who knows this place well. Wyatt Tinsley is with Ryan Vargas.
Wyatt Tinsley, you've been one of the fastest drivers all night. I was really paying attention to you during that long run. You were up against the wall, getting a massive run off the corner. How do you feel about your car tonight? I know we just had a short run there, but do you kind of want this to kind of be a short run race, or do you need this thing to go long?
I kind of need this thing to go long, mainly because, I'm really good on the wall. None of my teammates could do what I can do up there, just dive it in, get the run off, and that was really my work of magnitude there on the long run. I need to get clear of Brian and then have this go a little bit green, and then if it can go a little bit green, I think I can get Taylor here, but it's just going to be incredibly hard, in my opinion, to get a chance. The best way I'm going to be able to pass him is on a long green flag run there. But yeah, all in all, I got to thank Jarrett Liebert and North Force Racing. We have brought a piece this week at Richmond Raceway, my home track, so I'm just excited to be racing. I'm having fun. I'm having a lot of fun with the multi-groove. You can run the bottom, you can run the middle, you can run the outside. I think the wall in 3 and 4 actually is not too bad either. So you literally can run the wall both ends and just be just as faster, if not faster.
Heck yeah, well, you just about answered every question I had. Very impressive run so far tonight. I'll get you one more question here. How has the tire wear been tonight? That's been a topic of conversation all night. Is it a 15, 20, 30 lap deal? Like, what are you thinking here?
Tire wear hasn't been too much because the track is about 60 degrees. So I guess it really takes a long run for it to be a factor in my opinion. But all in all, it's been a fun race.
Heck yeah. Well, we'll let you get back to the restart here. Good luck for the rest of the event.
Thank you.
Wyatt Tinsley, who will start opposite Taylor Hurst outside of the front row, and with the way this is going, it is going to be in very good shape. I don't know if he'll outright have the opportunity to clinch this evening with the way it's panning out, but Dover with a good run could make it really happen as they fan out immediately behind the leaders. Somebody, I think, missed a shift there coming back up through the gears, but Hurst leads them, and they are 3 wide for the third spot.
All sorts of action further back there. You saw Malik Ray. He jumped to the outside coming to the restart there. I don't know if somebody had an issue. You mentioned it there. If somebody had an issue getting through the gears, maybe some tire spin. We do have about 10, 12 laps on these tires. So maybe a bit of tire spin there kind of caused a bit of a checkup. And Malik Ray kind of proven to be the benefactor here. He's going to roll the top side, and it looks like he's going to clear those 2 cars on his inside.
Big move there for Malik Ray to try and get the spot away from Quentin Warman. Timmy Holmes, though, is a driver who I think falls in that bucket of drivers who really need to have a good run. Although he's 15 points to the good of the cut line, but has had a rough go of it in a lot of these races. Finished last at Darlington. Did not have a great run at Phoenix either, so needs a sort of rebound run. This would qualify as a rebound run, Taylor Burst.
It certainly would, but another driver who needs a rebound run, Briar LaPrade. We saw how Darlington was not too kind to him last time out. He needs to try and have a good run. He's currently inside the top 15 for the moment, battling with several drivers. So if he can just get a couple of more spots as he tries to work around Brandon Hack, who is squeezing him as we have trouble. Nate Stewart is around off turn 2.
The Hopkinsville, Kentucky native spins and slides and tried to get it sorted, and I think we will stay green flag racing, but Stewart now falls down the pecking order to 39th on the grid. One more note on the Prad. Feast or famine for that driver throughout the course of this Contender Series. Has had 2 really good runs in the Contender Series this season. Had a great run at Vegas where he finished in 5th. Had a great run at Phoenix where he finished runner-up. Also 2 runs where he wrecked out early in Homestead and Darlington. So this being an odd-numbered race, I think he'd like the good finish as opposed to the bad finishes that have come through the even races. But all in all, in an okay spot right now. Certainly won't complain about good runs as we look at his battle for position with Busa, Bowden, and Tyler Gary.
Yeah, and if you're LaPrade, you're one of those guys. Thank goodness for the drop race, right? We talked about the solid runs he had. Yeah, he had a couple incidents throughout the season, but that drop race is definitely going to help save him as we get down to the nitty-gritty here.
He would use, or could use, I would say, a little bit more of that buffer, I think, to offset the 2 races where he picked up 1 point. That, I think, is big. We may see him drop, and that will factor in, especially later on in the season as we look at Timmy Holmes' battle and trying to get the 6th car above 6th in the running order where he sits now. But I think that's something that as we get later into proceedings, part of the battle is picking up good finishes. Part of the battle is making sure that your worst finish is not terrible. So Kerner with a pretty good worst finish, which was 23rd last time out. Brian Mercurio was 20th in the season opening race. When the rest of your finishes are above that, that's pretty good.
Yeah, we're looking right now at Timmy Holmes right at the moment. He's had not the best of runs these past couple of opening rounds. He was able to work his way up, but unfortunately gets collected in certain incidences, bad strategy calls, just needing to have a good run, which he is doing here tonight. And actually, in fact, over the weekend, he was competing in the Maxxis Nationals, a dirt karting championship out in South Carolina, and he was able to come home with a podium finish in one of his respective classes. So I think with that little bit of pump-up energy from him from this past weekend, he's looking to try to continue it and get a good run here tonight because he desperately needs it in order to continue his run into the eNASCAR Series in 2025.
More testament, I think, to drivers getting it done both on iRacing and in the real world. Here's a look at Michael P. Frisch's machine, driver out of Fort Lauderdale, Florida, in what I would consider, Ryan, to be a pretty iconic purple and white scheme. Cosman MSU and the folks at Splash & Go Graphics always hooking Frisch up with this look. And this is a combo, number and colors and all, that we've seen Frisch compete in on the sim for a long, long time.
I was about to say, nothing's more iconic than that 58 with bar visuals on the side of it, right? It's pretty cool to see Michael P. Frisch kind of getting the opportunity to run up here in the Contender Series. He made a substitute start in the Coke Series earlier this season and had a really solid run there. So really for him, you know, as long as he just kind of keeps these runs up, right now he entered tonight in the 26th position, so he was above the cut entering. So another night like that, I mean, running 11th, that's going to help pad that points gap.
It will. It definitely will. And a good run certainly would be to Frisch's liking, would definitely help get him closer to the top 20 and really sort this out. I think there's something to be said about maybe trying to avoid that 21st to 30th place if you can, and proving to folks that you can get it on pace. Riding on board now with the most recent winner of the eNASCAR College iRacing Series at Kansas out of Trabuco Canyon, California. This is the Cal State Fullerton Titan, Logan Clampett, who is just on the edge of the top 10, just in front of Frisch, actually, running in the 10th spot.
Yeah, he just got passed by Eddie Kerner right now for that 9th position, so he's trying to be careful. We saw what happened to him at Darlington. He's looking to try and bounce back from a recovery run to see if he can try and maintain a shot of staying in that top 30 right now. And I think right now he's doing what he needs to do. Just run his race, hold his line, give and take a little bit, and then set himself up to try and just be there at the end, not get caught up in any mistakes that could happen around him as we see Warman go up the racetrack just a little bit.
Just sort of holding yourself back in points racing, which that's really, at the end of the day, Ryan, what this is all about. Yes, the wins and the titles are cool, but the main objective, be top 30. You don't necessarily have to go outright for a win every single race. If your intention is to make it into the Coke Series, just put yourself in a good position to where you'll be looked at positively and favorably in the eyes of these teams who will be watching these races and trying to determine who they might want to sign for 2025.
Yeah, and Logan Clampett, he's a proven competitor in the Coke Series and here in Contender. We also talked about how he won the most recent College Series race. So proven contender, proven to have speed, but not also to mention, but he also has a really cool paint scheme on his car. He has Eli Childs and Mothers Against Drug Driving, MADD, on his race car. So that's a really cool deal that he's got going there, real special to him. So really cool to see that out there.
Here's a good look at Colin Bowden's machine. The Build Submarines car for RFK, who we competed with, represented in the Coke Series this year. Elsewhere, this is the battle for 19th. How about Colin Keister and Yarashak going 3 wide for position?
Beating and banging a little bit right there as they came off of turn number 2, and now Keister will be able to prevail and get the spot over Yarashak, but that was a little too close for comfort, and now here comes a couple of other drivers, Ethan Lane and company, trying to see if they can sneak their way down to the bottom as we see Keister pick up a couple of more spots.
So Keister on that inside line, Yarashak, one of the drivers who I think we expected to have maybe a little bit better luck to start off this Contender Series, but finally was able to put up a really good run last week, finished in 7th at Darlington, now trying to find even more spots and rally his way back into a good spot to where it won't be an impossible task to lock himself into the top 30 come Texas.
Well, another thing that I'll mention too with Colin Keister, as we ride on board here with Blaze Crawford, Keister did a really good job when he got spun to lock it down, get the thing rotated, and get it fixed. Now he's back out here in the top 20 position. It's not a pretty night, but it's a recovery. But now we're kind of now as we go back to watching Blaze here, everybody's starting to move up the track now. We're talking about that tire wear, watching the groove widen out, and now as we watch here, moving way up the track. He's the highest car on the racetrack right now. He's going to run that 3rd lane, going to get a big run off the corner, roll right to the rear bumper of that 53. That's the benefit of that momentum that you get on the top side. So they stack up going into turn 1 there.
Blaze Crawford there, 20th on the racetrack. Keister continuing to work his way in the bottom. I think Keister probably is going to take home the award for most cars pass this evening. When you consider he started at the rear of the field, made his way up a little bit, got spun, went to the back of the field, now is driving his way through the field again, Taylor Burris. It might not necessarily be a win, but he's passed a tremendous amount of drivers in this field.
He absolutely has a great drive, a great recovery here midway through the race as he's trying to work his way through. As we go watch Dalton England as well, he's going to try to fight his way through the field just up ahead as he works his way. We're on board with him now. He sits 26th as he's going to have to try to fight his way back through with that A51 machine.
Came into tonight tied on points with Brad Wright for that last spot in the top 30. So it will not be an easy few weeks, I think, for the Springfield, Illinois native. But every opportunity is still there on the table to try and make your way into the top 30 and then prove yourself to the team. Sell yourself as a driver, as a marketer, is everything that you would expect out of a real-life NASCAR driver to give them as good a case as possible as to why you should be a Coke Series driver come 2025.
Yeah, and you see right there, Dalton England he's one of those guys that's still committed to that bottom lane, just kind of rolling that inside. We saw a bit of a stack up there. Looked like the 24 of Euroshack. It looked like he may have gotten to the wall a little bit down the backstretch, but now as we switch views here, a lot of movement throughout the field here tonight.
It's Taylorsville, North Carolina's Michael Bumgarner, who's got experience in real life as well. He's gone to victory lane in limited late model competition at Hickory Motor Speedway, which you can also compete at on iRacing. And Bumgarner, a little bit further back in this field, 33rd rather, currently in the running order. Ryan Doucette is where we'll head next. The Framingham, Massachusetts driver, 31st in the running order, just behind Agnell Phillip, who you see there in that black and white and green car just up the road.
Mr. Lean too. Look how much he's leaning right there through the middle of the corner. He is just trying to give it everything he's got right now. Sawing at the wheel a little too much for my liking, so the car must be struggling for handling right at the moment. But he is just trying to fight his way through. A tough break for him after getting caught up with an incident.
Yeah, we talked about different types of wheels earlier with the Formula wheel versus the oval wheel, but I'm looking at the wheel input that Doucette's here. He's kind of a little shaky on the wheel. I don't know if it's either a case of a lot of force feedback or no force feedback, but a lot of twitchiness on that wheel there. But you know, he's just kind of holding steady, running in 31st. I mean, maybe just an ill-handling race car. Maybe he was caught up in one of those incidents. Maybe just didn't catch it. But interesting to see the differences there.
I think the key here, there are two things that I think of when I look at this, Ryan. One is steering ratio and whether or not it's set to require more rotation or less. And then B, and Taylor touched on this a little bit earlier, over-rotating those front tires. You only need to turn it through the corner as much as you have to. If you try and turn it further to the inside, you end up wearing out those front tires pretty quickly. Here's Brandon Houck, and yet another example of a different kind of wheel. He's on a Formula-style rim.
Oh, my goodness.
Yeah, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say, Brandon, I mean, that was just absolutely crazy. He is just zoned in. He is trying to focus in. I mean, he is even hunched over a little bit, trying to make sure he can hit that corner right there and get corner exit speed as best he can right now.
Houck 1 point behind England and Wright, who were tied for 30th. So this could be a really, really big night for Houck if he can gain a few more spots, especially when you consider that Wright is the very next car up the racetrack from him. Wright currently 21st, Houck 22nd. So it's not just a battle for track position, it's a battle right around that cut line as Ethan Lane was all kinds of sideways coming down the backstretch there.
Man, just kind of, it looked like Lane tried to move up, trying to clear himself a little bit on that pack there. He was the bottom of 3, a little bit of offset 3, I should say. Oh, and contact going into turn number 1 there, just getting real narrow off in there, but he's holding steady on the inside lane, just kind of trying to keep that momentum the best he can. But we see right there, Euroshack just really rolls the top side. Nothing that he can defend on that inside. Just so much more momentum on that top side.
Good battles there. Meanwhile, back to the front of the field. This is Wyatt Tinsley and Brian Mercurio. Taylor Hurst is just up the racetrack a little bit. There's a gap that's extended, 0.6 of a second between Hurst and Tinsley for first and second. But Mercurio's basically right there. It's maybe a car length, half a car length at that. These two have been tied together for a lot of this Contender Series, not just tonight at Richmond, but it also speaks to the strength of their team at North Force Racing when you consider Tinsley, Mercurio, Eddie Kerner, all part of that operation, all within the top 5 in Contender standings entering tonight.
It just really shows the precedent of that team and what we could expect going forward in 2025 with the North Sports organization and their drivers that they help get into the Coke Series. It's going to be critical to see how well that team will work together as they work their way through off of turn number 2 right now. But Tinsley, I've been noticing him just running that almost outside wall type of line right now, but he is just a tick off when it comes to the middle of turns 1 and 2, then sticks to the bottom for 3 and 4. Really interesting lines that he's running to try to make sure he gets the grip he needs.
You want to talk about teams that have built something here as we look on board with Ryan Luza, but what Presley Gilson has built at North Force Racing, especially in the last 3 to 4 years, pretty spectacular. They've got drivers from the Coke Series, started to build their numbers up there. Last year, they signed Steven Wilson, who won the Coke Series title in 23 mid-season, and then got the championship this year with Parker White. Then you look at all these drivers running at the front of Contender, and I think for as long as we've talked about the Team Contis and the Dead Zones and the Altuses, the VRS Carranzas, all those groups, Ryan, I think we're remiss now if we don't include North Force in that conversation. They've proven that they can go out and get it done week after week, race after race.
Well, we talked about the strength of North Force. I mean, you look at the season, yeah, we've only had 4 races so far, but they have won 2 of them. That's 50% of the season. They've won them. I mean, if that's not a statement, I don't know what is. And you look at Wyatt Tinsley right now, I've been looking at the lap times, and he's been consistently anywhere within half a tenth to a tenth quicker than your leader, Taylor Hurst. And he's shrunken that lead down to about 2-3 tenths there. Kind of stretches out down the straightaway there. So, I don't know, give it a few laps here, but I think Wyatt Tinsley's going to start knocking on the door of the lead.
And speaking of Parker White, worth noting that he and I noticed that Daniel Falkingham, his good buddy as well, and fellow Mainer, those two are going together to see the NASCAR Cup Series Championship at Phoenix Raceway this weekend. And during the pre-race ceremonies, Parker will be recognized as the 2024 eNASCAR Coca-Cola iRacing Series champion, a tradition that's carried on long throughout the years. This goes back to the days at Homestead, Miami, when the championship finale was there. But Parker will be recognized on stage in front of that audience and that crowd ready to see a great title race in the Valley of the Sun. Really neat experience for the Norwich Block, Maine native. Battle for the lead beginning to tighten up just a bit. Here's the battle for 17th on the bottom of your screen. Kevin Champagne, Kwame Scott, Blaze Crawford. Kwame running with a new wheelbase this evening, hoping that it changes his fortunes. And Kevin Champagne just about lost it on corner exit there.
I think he might have had a little help from Keister. We'll have to see on replay later on that matter. But that was too close for comfort right there. He's going to lose 3 spots as he'll try to drop back behind Blaze Crawford. You have the 48 machine also right there behind a Brad Wright, looking to try to close in on this battle for position just around the top 20.
And battles that are important when you consider some of these points positions of drivers as well. Scott entered tonight 38, 16 points back of the cut line. Crawford has been sort of near it or around it and hasn't had the best of luck. And then you've got Kevin Champagne, who is only 8 points to the good, too. So drivers who, again, need good runs. And I think the closer we get to Texas, the more we're going to see desperation shed in.
Guys, I'm looking at the leaderboard right now, and I'm looking at what I'm seeing on the screen. Wyatt Tinsley is there. He has caught Taylor Hurst and is bringing Brian Mercurio with him.
He has, and I wonder if this will hold for Taylor Hurst. The best car all night tonight has not really been challenged at the front yet, but maybe that comes in the final 10 laps. As we remind you to go check out iRacing.com/Black Friday to take part in the Black Friday sale on iRacing. Also, I'll amend a statement from just a few moments ago. Blaze Crawford actually had a better run than I initially recalled at Darlington. He actually came in tonight 10th in points, 31 points by the cut line, so that wouldn't shock me, and I think that's sort of what happened here, is that Crawford is backed out of that battle between Champagne and Scott, who quite frankly need the points more than Crawford does at this stage of proceedings. But now you've got lap traffic in the way, you've got 9 laps to go, you've got lockdown versus NFR, and you've got a battle shaping up for the race lead right at the very end of this. And Taylor Burris, could we see a last lap pass for the 2nd week in a row?
It's a big possibility, and don't count out Ryan Luza right there in the background in 4th position. He could be a factor as they send it around to the inside of Vendaval, the lap car. You ride on board with Taylor Hurst as he is just trying everything he can to hold off the hard charge of Wyatt Tinsley and the North Force team. As now Tinsley goes to the outside. Mercurio thinks about going down to the bottom, see if he can go and challenge and try to take the fight to Taylor Hurst.
The trickiest part, I think, about this stretch here, Ryan, is that now if you are Tinsley, if you are Mercurio, you may have to go run a different lane than you've been running the whole race to find space to go alongside Hurst. And how your car handles in different places on this racetrack, depending on where you run and where you move to, that can vary a lot.
Yeah, Taylor Hurst is starting to run a bit of a defensive lane. He's moving up to the middle lane, and Tinsley says, all right, I see you. I'll go around the bottom. And he's closing the gap still, but all this is doing is it's bringing the rest of the top 5, or well, I should say top 4 with him. Ryan Luza's now entered the fray here, so really tight battle for the lead here, and I don't know if Wyatt Tinsley's the strongest car anymore. I think you may want to look at Ryan Luza.
Yeah, Luza and Mercurio have had the opportunity to hold tight here and keep things sorted, and they haven't really gotten into things. Meanwhile, there's a live look at the point standings and some of the drivers that are making good on this day and putting themselves in good positions. Cody Bias there in not a bad spot. And the 94 machine at Agnell Phillip, also 15 points to the good as well. Matthew Morton on the good side of things. And then the 23 of Alexander Russell, also sitting pretty.
Oh, you saw right there Wyatt Tinsley try to send it in off turn number 2 to get it to the inside of Taylor Hurst. Lap traffic could play a factor here as they catch up to the back bumper of Cade McClenny as we ride on board with Brian Mercurio. Watch and see as we get a front row seat to the battle for the race lead. Tinsley tries to show the nose off corner exit, gets a little loose though. This could open the door for Mercurio.
Really tried to send it through the middle of the corner. He gave up speed on the exit of the corner, and Taylor Hurst is able to maintain his spot for the time being. Meanwhile, Luza looking underneath Mercurio, who has a really tough decision to make as to whether or not he wants to try and go get the spot from Tinsley or keep Luza at back.
Guys, Tinsley has worn his stuff out. He has been sideways on the corner exit for a majority of the last few laps here. See right there, just a small slide there, not as dramatic, but Brian Mercurio, he's done a much better job of saving his stuff. But Ryan Luza, he's been consistently running some of the fastest laps. Actually, that last lap, he was the fastest car, white flag.
He may be the fastest car, but it might take something significant here for Luza to overtake anyone of Mercurio or Wyatt Tinsley. Big dive there in the middle. He may have a shot at Mercurio coming out of turn 4 to wrap this up as Tinsley sends it off one more time into the corner, but they will not catch Winston-Salem, North Carolina's Taylor Hurst, who picks up win number 2 of the Contender Series for 2024. He takes round number 5 at Richmond Raceway.
Once he got the lead, he took it, held on to it, and never looked back. But he did have to deal with some pressure this time around from the North Sports drivers. Great run, though, for Taylor Hurst.
Recognition there from Wyatt Tinsley. A little bit of love tap there from Ryan Luza. Lots of congratulations. This is a driver who has tons of experience, well-liked, well-respected in this series, and Taylor Hurst, he gets this Xfinity Series car, Ryan. There's no other way to slice it.
Well, not only does he get it, but he now is one of only 2 drivers to win multiple times this season. Taylor Hurst and Eddie Kerner both now have 2 wins apiece. They have both established themselves as the main threats for the championship here in the Contender Series.
Kerner has a little bit more of a buffer, has a better drop compared to Taylor Hurst, but they are nearly identical on points, and Hurst is going to gain a little bit on Kerner tonight as well, because Kerner finished a little bit further back. He was in the 7th position across the start-finish line, so we may potentially, and I think we might actually just see a flip for the points lead. Taylor Hurst, I believe, unofficially will be the points leader exiting Richmond and heading just I-95 and elsewhere to Dover Motor Speedway next week. Here are your results from tonight's eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series event at Richmond. Hurst, Tinsley, Mercurio, your podium. We'll talk to them in a moment. Then look at Dead Zone Racing with all that strength. Middle of the top 10. Luza and Ray complete the top 5. Timmy Holmes with a great run will absolutely take that 6. Eddie Kerner continues to roll on good momentum. He finishes 7th. Matthew Zwack with one of his best runs of the year, 8th. Another North Force driver, Logan Clampett, the lone Team Conti representative in the top 10. And Michael P. Frisch, the 5th North Force car in the top 10.
Go back to the first one of the rookie drivers of Quentin Warman with Ryko in 11th. Willa Pratt, a good recovery from last week's race at Darlington with a 12th place finish. Colin Bowden, Matt Busa, Christopher Hill, Tyler Gary in 16th. Kevin Champagne, Colin Keacher, those 2 battle it out to finish 17th and 18th. Kwame Scott, Blaze Crawford rounding out your top 20.
Now we get to the 21st through 30th here. Brad Wright in the 48 machine comes home 21st. Ethan Lane, 22nd. Connor Yuroshak, P23. Brandon Hawk, 24th. Dylan Jones, 25th. James Wenzel in P26. Garrett Maines, a quiet night, rounds out in the 27th position. Same for Dylan Alt, Ryan Doucette, and Blake McCandless.
The big thing I noticed when I look at these final 10 drivers, a lot of drivers who were already below the cut line, who have not done themselves any favors this evening. Dalton England is down there and will not gain too much here. Cade McClenny was down there. Michael Venable was already down there. And then some other drivers who just had some bad luck. Agno Phillip, Cody Bias, Nate Stewart had that spin a little bit later on in the race and just never got the yellow he needed to catch back up. And Ray Alfalla, 40th again for the second time in the last 3 races, a major shot to his hopes of making it back to the Coke Series. Let's go to Taylor Burris, who will have the opportunity to chat with our winner for the second time in this Contender Series season, Taylor Hurst.
Well, Taylor, I mean, last time you were in victory lane, you pretty much had a smooth sailing cruise to victory. Were you sweating a little bit this time around? I felt like you had a little bit of some pressure coming from behind.
Yeah, for sure, man. I definitely didn't have the long run car I thought I'd have tonight. Those guys, Wyatt and Brian, both were really fast long run, so they really made me sweat a lot. I'm physically sweating a lot, so I mean, after like 35, 40 laps, man, they just kept running me down, and they had the confidence in their cars to run it all the way up to the top lane on entry, and I really didn't have that, or at least I didn't feel comfortable doing it. I'm a bottom feeder. So, yeah, overall, man, obviously it's the best result you can get. I've been talking to you guys almost every week. So we just got to keep the ball rolling next week, and we go to Dover. Hopefully we can get some green runs like we did tonight. It was great to see. We don't really see it too much anymore, and anytime we do, it's usually a good race. So, yeah.
Well, my final question is, it's pretty much been you and Eddie Kerner this season with showcasing the speed and talent that you have, and with Lockdown Racing and Norse Force. What's been the big help with Lockdown Racing coming back in here, and the big change compared to what we saw in 2023?
I mean, we were pretty strong last year. I want to say I ran like somewhere from between like 7th and 12th almost every race, just kind of, rode around every race and got my finishes, and came back through like 10th points or something like that. And I don't know, this year it's really just I've been focusing a lot on qualifying, and compared to the next gen, this car really suits me with the way the toe is in the rear and track bar and everything else. So having that, and also some tracks on the schedule, like this is one of my favorite tracks as well. So having that, and having some resources from last year as well. Like I said, we ran pretty decent, and just kind of improving it a little bit, and qualifying huge, man. Qualified second and got a really good start, and from there I had clean air the rest of the race, and clean air is king. So.
Absolutely. Well, that's Taylor Hurst, your winner here tonight at Richmond. Next up is Wyatt Tinsley. He is with Ryan Vargas.
Wyatt, you said you wanted the long run. You got the long run and just came up a little bit short. What more did you need tonight to try and get the job done?
I needed to save my tires better. I honestly didn't think we would go the rest of the way green there, so I kind of wanted to get a little track position over Brian, get a pit stop. Maybe I can get a lucky pit stop and get Taylor Hurst out of the pit road. But all in all, I got to give it to Norse Force Racing, man. We are most of the top 10 there, and the setup was on rails. I just needed to execute a little bit better there, my tire wear, basically. But I told you I would be high side and hustling. And the 3 and 4 line was actually really good, too. I enjoyed it. I actually didn't think it would be that much better than I thought it was. But all in all, it was a great race, and I'm thankful for the result.
Yeah, you definitely were one of the more aggressive ones on that top lane. But you mentioned it, Norse Force Racing. Obviously, you guys locked out the top 10 and pretty heavily. There are a lot of Norse Force cars up there. How does it feel to kind of be in a group like that, surrounded by such a strong group of drivers with great setups, great people around you? Does that build confidence? How do you feel moving into these next few races?
Yeah, definitely. It builds a lot of the confidence level. The team morale is just all-time high with winning the second championship. And Coke, and then just coming out here and dominating like we are. I think it just provides like an overall mentality that's just excellence. And everyone at the team we just work so good together with Jarrett, Botafuco's not in the series, but he works on the setup quite a bit. He does such a good job as well. And then everyone that just works on it every week that puts in time and effort, it's just amazing in my opinion. And I was working with Brian there. He was being helpful a lot because I stayed behind him last week, and because he had a little damage. And all in all, I think we just worked so good as like a group of people, and that's what is why we're dominating so much.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for taking the time to talk with us here tonight, Wyatt. Great run tonight. I'm going to toss it back to Taylor, who has another North Force driver, Brian Mercurio.
Here with Brian Mercurio. Brian, a great run for you tonight as well for the North Force organization. I do got to ask, though, if Wyatt did leave that door open a little bit too much, were you going to try and go for that second place? And if you did, could you have caught up and passed Taylor Hurst?
Man, it's just... I think I was feeling really good there with how my tires were. It's just, as much as it might seem easy to pass, actually getting to somebody and then passing them are two completely different things. So I don't know. I felt I was maybe a little bit better than Wyatt and Taylor there, especially Wyatt was saying he was struggling with the rear tires there. He didn't expect us to go green there on that run to the end, so he said he burnt up his stuff just a little bit. But honestly, a lot of this racing here in the Contender Series comes down to points racing. So just kind of like I said at Homestead, getting a win would be really nice. But at the end of the day, being able to bank a third place finish and all the points you get from it, those are the kind of runs you need.
And finally, next week we head to Dover for, of course, another great track, but one that could be a lot of ups and downs, twists and turns in a sense. What is your best strategy when going into Dover to just get through, get your points, and move on?
Well, I guess if this is sort of my de facto home race here as a guy who grew up in New Jersey, I'm now living in Pennsylvania, so I always like to try to run well at Dover. Back in my rookie season, back in 2020, I had my best finish. I didn't really have a good season overall, but I managed to finish 11th there. So I've had some bad races. I've had some really good races at Dover. Hopefully we can get some long runs just like we had tonight. From what I know, Dover is another track where we might be able to move around and kind of change which lane we run in. I think you guys definitely saw it on the broadcast here tonight that a lot of us were able to move around and guys can kind of cater to their driving style with how the track evolves over the race. I think we'll be able to get a lot of that at Dover, so pretty excited for it. Richmond in particular here, anybody that knows me from my history of competing in eNASCAR here since like 2020, I'm not good at Richmond. I have not liked running at Richmond. I felt really good last year until some stuff just didn't go my way. We had a bunch of cautions, and I think I'm kind of turning the corner on Richmond. Shout out to Blake McCandless. He'd always say that Richmond would be his favorite track, and I'd always argue with him about it. But it's kind of like Texas on iRacing here. Some people might not be the biggest fans of it in real life, but I've had a lot of really good results through my eNASCAR competition there. So I guess kind of by default, I like Texas because of that, and I think I'm turning the corner here on Richmond too. So very happy about that. Really, put yourself in a good qualifying spot. You can get a good finishing result. So overall, I'm really happy about tonight.
Turning a new leaf here on the track here at Richmond. Brian Mercurio coming home in P3. James?
Those are your podium finishers who took the top spots. Here are the point standings, and we can say congratulations to Taylor Hurst and Eddie Kerner, both 81 points or more clear of that cut line. Those two are part of the Coca-Cola free agency class for the upcoming Coke Series season on the math. Everybody else got some work to do, though. For Tinsley and Mercurio in particular, a good run at Dover will see them join the likes of Hurst and Kerner as well. And if anything, this is more just a testament to how good they've been and how consistent they've been throughout this Contender Series.
Absolutely. I have to say, and of course, a couple of other drivers as well who worked their way through, who could work into the next round for the 2025 season that we see. This is the part that we're concerned about. Those who are on the outside looking in and right there on the line. Brad Wright has a 3-point advantage over Nate Stewart, who also didn't have a great night as well. So this is where we could see a lot of shakeup, especially heading to Dover.
Ryan, as you look at these standings now, what's your biggest takeaway?
My biggest takeaway right now is, we're now 4 or 5 races into the season now, and a lot of these guys, we talked about it at Phoenix. Okay, it's still early. It's race number 3. We're going to be able to kind of get through this, but now we're at race 5. And if you're one of these guys, if you're a Kwame Scott, a Kate McClenny, a Ray Alfala, multiple-time Coke Series champion, you're sitting here 38 points below the cut line. You're getting sweaty now. You're getting nervous, seeing this gap continuously get bigger.
Alfala in particular, 38 points, had the terrible luck there at the beginning of this. And we have to ask, even though he is statistically the greatest driver of all time, are we witnessing the final 2 eNASCAR races, potentially, of Ray Alfala's career? Something to ponder as we turn our attention to the Monster Mile, which is where we'll head next, Ryan. 1 week from tonight, November 12th, Dover Motor Speedway for round 6 of the Contender Series.
Oh yeah, man, the Monster Mile, one of my favorite tracks. I say it all the time, but this place is so cool. It's so fast. You dive into the corner. It feels like you're dropping down on a roller coaster going into the corners here, but nonetheless, it's going to be an exciting race tonight. I'm agreeing with Brian Mercure here. I hope we get a lot of long runs, because once the tires wear in and the groove widens out, this place lends itself to some incredible side-by-side racing.
And Taylor Burris, the opportunity for some of these drivers to wrap up points as well as we look at Contender. Also worth noting that in a few weeks' time, we'll have the College Series back from Michigan Speedway. It'll be the trucks, the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series. Time Attack Open tonight. Runs all the way through next Thursday, November 14th. And the race you'll see here on eNASCAR.com/live, November 19th. This one will be a great way to cap off the fall semester, Taylor.
It really is. I mean, we touched on it. This track with the trucks, it's basically high-speed, super speedway style racing with these trucks. We're going to see a lot of big toes, big draft, especially on the long back straightaway. And then we've seen 4-5 wide finishes here at Michigan in iRacing. We are bound to possibly see that here again for the College Series in a couple of weeks' time.
One more shot for some drivers to have a crack at some scholarship money to help towards their tuition coming up on the 19th. That will do it for tonight's broadcast of the eNASCAR Contender iRacing Series at Richmond Raceway. For all of our partners at eNASCAR, for our producer Drew Adamson and the entire team behind the scenes at iRacing's broadcast headquarters, making it happen up in Massachusetts and elsewhere, and for my colleagues in the booth, Taylor Burris and Ryan Vargas, I am James Pike. Thank you so much for watching iRacing's broadcast of the Contender Series from Richmond. We'll see you 1 week from tonight at the Monster Mile in Dover, Delaware.